Hey, it's Clayton Olson, and if you are going through a breakup right now and you're wondering, how do I deal with this breakup? Or how do I get over this person? Maybe you've ended the relationship with somebody, they've ended it with you. You might be in a lot of pain right now. And relationship breakups can be one of the most emotionally devastating experiences of one's life. Simultaneously, it can be one of the most powerful crucibles for you to transform yourself into a version of you that you otherwise would not be able to. And the stand that I'm taking in this video is to open up a perspective for you that will allow you to shift from a place of feeling like a victim to a place of feeling like a creator in your life. I've personally experienced a tremendous amount of loss in my life, and I've experienced it through breakups. I've experienced it through my father died of lung cancer when I was 18, and some of the breakups that I experienced actually in my 20s were even more intense than the loss of my father. I think partly because when my dad died, there was this way that I just knew I wasn't responsible for it. And it was just more about really feeling the loss and accepting that he had passed. Where with the breakups I experienced, I had doubts that were coupled with the grief. Doubts that maybe I did something incorrectly. Maybe that if I was more of a man, stronger, more aware, more loving, that somehow I could have changed the course of things. And it's that regret and guilt coupled with the loss that can make something so torturous. So if you're in that situation, I want to perhaps insert a little bit of medicine and just screw with your thinking a little bit to help you be more flexible in the situation, the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you take care of yourself during this tender time. Now, there's a concept that I want to open up, and the concept is called Antifragility, and it was a concept introduced by Nassim Taleb in his book Antifragile. But before I do, I want to read a quote by David R. Hawkins in his book Letting Go, which I think begins to move the needle and usher us into a different way of thinking about tragedy. So here's the quote. He says, "There is an inborn drive in the unconscious towards wholeness, incompleteness, and realization of self. The unconscious will devise the ways and means of bringing this about, even if they are traumatic to the conscious mind. The unconscious will devise the ways and means of bringing this about, even if they are traumatic to the conscious mind." Now, imagine what it would be like if we really adopted that perspective and we overlaid it across all of the tragedy and all of the things that we can't explain why they happened, right? If we say, actually, this is the mechanism, this is what's happening. Our unconscious mind is creating situations for us to come into deeper and greater integration in life. What does that do to the pain and suffering that you're experiencing now? It might not reduce it necessarily, but what it could do is it could bring a certain level of meaning to it. And I know in my life, this perspective, what it's done is it's allowed me to create a container for the things that happen that are on the surface tragic, that seem like loss. And it allows me to alchemize those experiences and trust that perhaps what I'm experiencing is simply a curriculum that my unconscious mind has devised for me so that I can step into a more whole and complete self. And that whole and complete self is ultimately where I believe fulfillment, deep gratitude, and enjoyment of life ultimately live. And just because my conscious mind doesn't understand it when it's in the thick of it, my unconscious mind knows that I'm ready for it. So it devises this curriculum for me to go through it that ultimately pushes me into a better version of me. Now, what if that's true with your breakup? Right? In some ways, it's difficult, right? Because we've got to let go of the hope of the possibility with that person. Or perhaps we feel like we made a mistake because the relationship ended and we say, okay, well, it was a failure because the relationship ended. And I think my argument there would say, well, listen, every single relationship will end in your life. Someone will die at some point. And we can't necessarily put the label of success on something by how long it lasts. Perhaps we can deem something, we can change the measurement of success and say it's a success because of what we were able to gain from it, what we were able to create with it. And oftentimes it might not be what we create with the other person, but maybe the meaning and the story that we wrap around it after it's over. And so what if you are an author right now? What if you actually do get to write down the chapter of this next portion of your life, and maybe the situation has been delivered to you because it's designed to wake you up to the fact that you do have a pen in your hand and you get to create the meaning around what this experience was to you and what you're gaining from it, and ultimately where you want to go, the lessons that you want to draw from it. I know women that have been in narcissistic, abusive relationships that come out and they feel compromised by these situations. Maybe they don't feel like they can trust themselves or they can trust in life anymore to deliver them something different than that previous experience. And it can be a difficult place to be. And when we are able to mine some type of intelligence from the situation and say that maybe this abusive person came into our life because it was a place for us to finally take a stand. It created the perfect situation for us to take a stand for the things that are important to us, or a place where we can finally honor us and not honor someone else, and really protect our hearts and be able to have the strength to walk away, that we then can trust that we won't make that same decision again. So this concept that I'm ultimately speaking to is antifragility. And antifragility, I'm going to just read this quote or this synopsis of what this means from Nassim Taleb. Taleb introduces the book as follows. Some things benefit from shocks. They thrive and grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, and stressors, and love adventure, risk, and uncertainty. Yet, in spite of the ubiquity of this phenomena, there is no word for the exact opposite of fragile. According to Taleb, the opposite of fragile is antifragile. Antifragility is beyond resilience or robustness. Pema Chodron, in a book called When Things Fall Apart, has this quote. She says that only through disaster can that which is permanent be found within us. And so, again, what if we're taking all of these concepts, this anti-fragility, this idea that our unconscious is orchestrating situations in service of our higher self, and that ultimately this is around us finding the deeper truth within us by having things externally deteriorate in our life so we can find that true anchor, that core within us. What if this is what it's all about? It's a thought experiment, right? And I don't expect you to believe it immediately, but I just want to open you up to the idea, point you in the direction that, look, when I work with people going through breakups, one of the things that I love about it is that there's been this shift under the ocean, metaphorically speaking, that has created this massive tidal wave that's about to hit shore. And oftentimes when people contact me, they're on this wave and maybe they're getting tossed about it and they're getting thrown into the depths, feeling like they're drowning. But through adopting and beginning to live this perspective, one can find balance on this tsunami, and they can ride it to a shore, to an island, to a place within themselves that they otherwise would not have been able to get to. And that's the power of the situation that you're in right now. That's the power, that's the crucible this breakup, this loss, this grief that you're experiencing might actually be offering, is that it's a vehicle to a version of you into a perspective of life that would otherwise not be available. It's a gateway, it's a doorway, and it requires a certain sense of courage and trust to walk through it. And speaking of trust, these situations, when we don't have this perspective, can be very compromising to our ability to trust life. We might look at life and say, why did God do this to me? Why did the universe deliver this experience to me? What did I do to deserve this? What did I do wrong? How am I to blame? What is wrong with me that this happened? And it can have us being more gun shy and not being able to step up and take risk. But when we install this way of looking at loss over the things that we can't really control, it allows us to establish a secure attachment with life. It allows us to look up at the stars, to look up at God or whatever it is that we believe. And even if we don't believe in anything, maybe we are an atheist, but we believe in our subconscious. Maybe it allows us to look at those things we don't understand within ourselves and say, I trust that this has been orchestrated for me. And maybe I don't know quite yet why this has occurred, the details of it, but I'm open to finding out. And I'm open to staying present. I'm open to breathing through it. And in that place, perhaps there can be more self-compassion that arises. There can be blame that starts to disintegrate. There can be a sense of guilt and uneasiness that just dissolves away. And in its place, there can be courage. There can be presence. There can be an open heart to say yes to the experience because you know it's in service of your growth rather than it's there to unnecessarily torture you or break you down. So I know this is a big maneuver. It's a big ask to make. And if you're in that spot currently, I want you to feel free to comment below this video. My heart goes out to you if you're in the situation, and I trust and I know that if you are watching this and you've made it this far, that you are stronger than you believe, and that this experience will change you for the better. I've seen it happen continually with all of the clients that I've worked with over the last 7 years who have been going through breakups, and it can be a turning point in your life. And one of the main things that you really that I encourage you to do is just continue to be compassionate with yourself, continue to be and allow yourself to feel whatever it is that you're feeling, realizing that there is no timeline on like when you should stop feeling a certain way, that whatever is coming up, turn towards it and say yes to it, and trust that it is a teacher. It is a guru. The emotion is a guru in sorts, and it's just asking for your attention for a moment or two, and to not make it wrong or reject it, but to be curious as you turn towards it and say yes. So that's the invitation, and like this video if you've got something from it. Subscribe to the channel if this resonated with you and you're wanting more advice around building healthy relationships that ultimately start with you, that you can take out into the world. Thanks for watching.